Yes, very good afternoon all of you. So we'll be continuing with the Domestic Violence Act, and we'll be doing a quick revision of all the provisions that we have done till now regarding the DV Act, and then we'll be doing the rest of the provisions that are left. Fine. Remember, in such laws you will have to be very careful about remembering the sections, because section based questions बहुत पूछे जाते हैं. So you'll have to be very careful in remembering the sections as such. For example, if you talk about, let us say, the definition of shared household, it is in section 2 clause S. Then the definition of respondent, it is in 2 clause Q. Then the definition of aggrieved person is in 2 clause A. Then the definition of domestic relationship, it is 2 clause F, right? So these are the different definitions in section 2 of the DV Act. Then we have section 3, which is the definition of domestic violence. Then section 12 talks about the application, that you have to give an application. You will have to give an application about the domestic violence to the magistrate. What is the time period for the magistrate to complete the proceedings? It is 6 months time period which has been given to complete the proceedings under the DV Act. Sorry, it's not 6 months, it is 60 days. It is 60 days time period which has been given to complete the proceedings under the DV Act, under section 12, right? In how many days do we have to fix the first date of hearing? 3 days. And then the notice will be given to the protection officer, and the protection officer will serve the notice on the respondent within 2 days of the receipt of notice, right? After that, section 14 talks about counseling, that if you think counseling is going to benefit the aggrieved party and the respondent, and the matter can be amicably settled and relationships can be restored, then you can order for counseling. That is the discretion of the magistrate. And if you are ordering counseling, then you will not fix, or you will fix the date within 2 months. Within 2 months, you will be fixing the date from the time when you have ordered the counseling, right? Then 15, assistance of welfare expert. You can also take the assistance of a welfare expert or a social provider, etc., or a social worker who is specialized in this particular field. Then proceedings to be held in camera. अब ये sections ना अगर आप देखोगे बहुत loosely arranged है, इनमें कोई आपको sequence नहीं दिखेगा. So when you see section 16, it says proceedings to be held in camera. That means proceedings to be held in camera, meaning that proceedings will be held privately, and that is the discretion of the magistrate. So it is not a general rule. Generally, the proceedings can happen in open court as well, but if the magistrate thinks, then the proceedings will be held in camera. That is section 16. Then from section 17 onwards, we have certain rights. For example, section 17 is right to reside in shared household. And I have told you, it is not necessary that the shared household is in the name of the husband. It can even be in the name of the father-in-law or anybody else. But if you had a chance, or if you are living in a particular shared household, then that will give you a right to reside in that shared household. Moreover, it is not specific to an aggrieved person. It is not specific to an aggrieved woman, right? 18 to 22. Then there are different remedies. 18 is protection, 19 is residence, 20 monetary, 21 custody, 22 compensation, and 23 is interim orders and ex parte orders. Fine. So 23 is interim and ex parte orders, and ex parte orders can also be passed. That is absolutely fine. And interim orders can also be passed. Then 24, copies are to be given free of cost. Then 25, until and unless the aggrieved person applies for discharge, the orders in the Domestic Violence Act will continue to operate. 26, relief in suits and other legal proceedings. If you have taken relief of compensation, monetary relief, custody, etc., in any other personal law, in any other law, in ordinary civil legislation, then in that particular situation, the relief under Domestic Violence Act will be altered accordingly. 26 हो गया. 27 is jurisdiction. Now, who has jurisdiction? The judicial magistrate of the first class or the Metropolitan Magistrate. Now, the Metropolitan Magistrate will only have jurisdiction if the case belongs to the date or time period before the 1st of July 2024. Because from the 1st of July 2024, CRPC has been repealed, BNSS has come into force, and BNSS has removed the post of Metropolitan Magistrates. So there are no Metropolitan Magistrates and there are no Assistant Sessions Judges in the BNSS. Fine. So it is primarily the Judicial Magistrate of the first class. वैसे भी जो Metropolitan Magistrate होते हैं, they are in the hierarchy, they are in the same level as a Judicial Magistrate of the first class. It's just that they are in metropolitan areas where the population exceeds 1 million, that is 10 lakhs. Fine. Person aggrieved permanently or temporarily resides or carries on business or is employed, respondent resides or carries on business, cause of action arisen. That means किसी भी व्यक्ति के residence, किसी भी व्यक्ति के place of work, business या जहां पे cause of action, domestic violence हुई है, ऐसे किसी भी जगह पर आप ये complaint file कर सकते हो and the order is enforceable throughout India. This order can be enforced throughout India. Procedure, the procedure of CRPC will apply. And appeal, you can file an appeal to the Court of Session within 30 days. Who can file an appeal? Aggrieved person or respondent? Aggrieved person or respondent? Both. Both of them can file an appeal. Very good. Then 30, protection officers and members of service providers to be public servants. आपने इस particular act के PYQs देखे हैं वैसे कुछ? Have you seen some PYQs of this act? देखोगे ना तो वो हर सेक्शन से सवाल पूछ रहे हैं. At some point or the other, they are asking you questions from each section. For example, which section provides that protection officers are public servants? तो अभी section 30 है. Up to remember this, it requires a lot of practice. To remember this, it requires a lot of practice. Then 31, penalty for breach of protection order by a respondent. अगर respondent protection order को breach करता है तो क्या penalty है? 1 year imprisonment or 1 lakh fine. I think that is it, right? No, 1 year imprisonment or 20,000 fine or both. Fine. Cognizance and proof. It will be a cognizable and non-bailable offence. Sole testimony पे ये presume करा जा सकता है that breach of protection order has taken place. Then penalty for not discharging duty by protection officer. It is exactly the same, which is what? 1 year, 20,000 or both. Cognizance of offences committed by protection officer, you will have to take the sanction of the state government. Protection of action taken in good faith is in 35, and this act is not in derogation with any other law, that is 36. And the central government has the power to make rules. Let's try to see if you know. 12 talks about the application, 13 talks about notice, 14 talks about counseling, 15 talks about welfare experts, 16 talks about proceedings to be in camera, 17 is right to reside in shared household, then 18 to 22, I hope you remember, 18 is protection, 19 is residence, 20 is monetary, 21 custody, 22 compensation. 23 is interim orders plus ex parte orders. 24 is copy will be given free of cost. 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. I remember 29 is appeal. मुझे याद है कि ये अपील की बात करें 30 days to court of session. 25, 26, 27, 28. 28 मुझे याद है कि प्रोसीजर सीआरपीसी का अप्लाई होगा. 27 talks about jurisdiction, and who has jurisdiction? Judicial Magistrate, first class. Sure. Okay. 25 किस बारे में बात करता है? Alteration plus duration के बारे में 25 बात करता है. So 26 मेरे ख्याल से enforcement के बारे में बात करता होगा. हाँ, रिलीफ इन अदर सूट्स. तो ये कौन सा प्रोविजन है कि आप किसी भी जगह पर इसको एनफोर्स करा सकते हो? ये कहां पर है? वेयर इज दिस गिवन देन? जुरिस्डिक्शन में दिया हुआ है, आर बी श्योर? जुरिस्डिक्शन में दिया, वेरी गुड, ठीक है। आई थिंक यहां पे हमें एक बारी रुक जाना चाहिए। 23 टॉक्स अबाउट ex parte orders plus interim relief, right? 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. अब मुझे दो याद है, 27 is jurisdiction, 29 is appeal. Huh? CRPC. 24 is copies to be given free of cost. 25 and 26. I think 25 is duration and alteration. Duration plus alteration. And 26 is? Okay, relief in other laws. ठीक है, ठीक है। अब 29 से एक बार आगे चलते देखते हैं हमें याद होता है कि नहीं होता। 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. Let's see. 30, I think they are talking about that they are public servants. ठीक है, protection officer, etc. 31, I think they are talking about breach of protection order. Right? 1 year and 20,000 fine. 32, they are talking about cognizance. Huh? Cognizance. 33, they are talking about. Okay, so they are talking about breach by protection officer, breach of duty, है ना? Breach by protection officer, that is again 1 year and 20,000. So there, see यहाँ पे पहले protection officer को बना दिया हमने public servant, फिर प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर के ऑर्डर को ब्रीच करने का हमने पेनल्टी बता दी, उसकी कॉग्निजेंस बता दी, फिर ब्रीच बाय प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर बता दिया, फिर आई थिंक यहाँ सैंक्शन की बात करी है। सैंक्शन बाय स्टेट गवर्नमेंट हैज टू बी गिवन टू प्रोसिक्यूट प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर। देन व्हाट इज 35? Then what is 35? 35 is protection of action taken in good faith. Okay, they are talking about good faith and they are saying act is not in derogation and then the central government can make rules. ये भी पूछ लेते हैं that who has the power to make rules, और अभी तो आपको याद है क्योंकि अभी अभी आपके सामने ये बात डिस्कस करी गई है। जब आपके पास 10-12 माइनर लॉज होंगे और उसमें पूछेगा आपसे जिसमें कहीं सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट है, कहीं स्टेट गवर्नमेंट है, कहीं दोनों है, तो इट बिकम्स अ लिटिल बिट ऑफ अ प्रॉब्लम। रिमेंबर, व्हेनेवर द लेजिस्लेशन इज वेरी सीरियस देन जनरली द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट इज इन्वॉल्व्ड। जनरली वहां पे सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट इन्वॉल्व होती ही होती है, ठीक है। प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर के लिए सैंक्शन स्टेट गवर्नमेंट दे रही है बिकॉज प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर को डिप्यूट स्टेट गवर्नमेंट करेगी। सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट हर डिस्ट्रिक्ट में प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर्स को डिप्यूट नहीं कर सकती, राइट? लेट्स ट्राई टू डू इट अगेन। 30 talks about that they are public servants. 31 talks about the penalty for breach of protection order, that is 1 year and 20,000 fine or both. Then 32, 33, 34. 32 I think talks about cognizance, that it is cognizable plus non-bailable offense. अच्छा, somebody has sent a doubt online. मैंने शायद passing reference में आप लोगों को ये बताया था that can a police officer grant bail in a non-bailable offense? The answer is yes. Somebody has asked that what is the provision. First of all, the provision will be dealt when we will be doing BNSS, when BNSS will take place in your batch. But if for self-reading you want to know, then it is section 480 of BNSS, that is bail in non-bailable offences, 480, and it is section 437 in CRPC. अब अगर आप कहो कि सर हमें वहां पे नहीं मिल रहा, तो वो बहुत लोगों को नहीं मिल रहा, 90% जनता को नहीं मिल रहा, वो मैं जब पढ़ाऊंगा तभी बता पाऊंगा। Absolutely correct. That is where you get the hint from. Absolutely right. But still, everybody cannot be reasonably be expected to find it. अभी तक जैसे for example, if it was not told, तो उस चीज पे ध्यान नहीं जा रहा था कि ये दे सकता है। अभी तक यही सीखा गया है हर जगह पे that इन नॉन बेलेबल ऑफेंसेस पुलिस ऑफिसर नहीं बेल देगा, कोर्ट देगा, वो भी कोर्ट की डिस्क्रिशन है। मैं कह रहा हूं इन स्पेसिफिकली इन द फर्स्ट 24 आवर्स पुलिस ऑफिसर के पास भी ज्यूरिसडिक्शन है टू ग्रांट पे। पुलिस ऑफिसर आल्सो हैज ज्यूरिसडिक्शन, बट विल कम टू दैट लेटर, डोंट वरी। ठीक है, सो कॉग्निजेंस की बात करें, देन 33 दे आर टॉकिंग अबाउट ब्रीच बाय प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर, राइट? दे आर टॉकिंग अबाउट ब्रीच बाय प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर, अगेन इट इज 1 year और 20,000 और बोथ। देन 34, देन 35। अब यहाँ पे 34 मेरे ख्याल से सैंक्शन की बात हो रही है, एंड ये बात कर रहे हैं प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ एक्शन टेकन इन गुड फेथ। 36 दे आर टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट एक्ट इज नॉट इन डेरोगेशन, एंड देन 37 सेज दैट सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट कैन मेक रूल्स। ऐसे ही आप बार बार प्रैक्टिस करोगे तो ऐसे ही आपको प्रोविजंस याद होंगे। सो इफ डीवी एक्ट इज कमिंग फॉर 1 or 2 marks, they are secure for you, and believe me it makes a lot of difference scoring 1 or 2 marks also. ठीक है, I was just reading some news that in the NEET PG, the medical entrance test for post graduation, there is this aspirant who has scored 9 out of 800 marks, and he has secured a seat in a private university for PG in medical sciences. What PG I don't know, शायद मैं न्यूज पढ़ रहा था। 9 out of 800 marks. So I'm not saying anything else, I'm just saying each mark counts, each mark makes a difference. मुझे ध्यान है कुछ सालों पहले, काफी टाइम पहले, दिल्ली जुडिशरी में जो रिक्वायर्ड, मतलब बेसिकली दिल्ली जुडिशरी में आउट ऑफ 200 the cutoff is 120. Cutoff in the sense you have to minimum score 120, otherwise it's you are failed basically. जितनी वैकेंसीज थी, और दिल्ली जुडिशरी में ऐसा नहीं कि बहुत वैकेंसीज आती है, कम ही वैकेंसीज आती है, जितनी वैकेंसीज थी उतने बच्चे नहीं मिल रहे थे फॉर द मेंस एग्जामिनेशन जो 120 आउट ऑफ 200 स्कोर कर रहे हैं। एक तो लेवल ऑफ पेपर पता चलता है इससे, and the level of studies, the education that students are getting, ये भी पता चलता है। that you're not able to score 120 out of 200. What is 120 out of 200? What is 120 out of 200? So आप समझ रहे हो, आप 60% के आसपास नहीं स्कोर कर पा रहे। That too in an MCQ based paper where the answer is in front of you. You don't have to think. You don't have to show creativity. The answer is in front of you out of the 4 options, but still you're not able to crack it. Very difficult है। Why has the government launched the Pratibha Setu program for UPSC candidates? एक बच्चा जो इंटरव्यू तक पहुंच रहा है वो लगभग सिलेक्टेड ही तो है, वो लगभग सिलेक्टेड ही तो है, so he should get good employment opportunities. That is the Pratibha Setu portal that has been launched by the government for UPSC aspirants. समझ रहे हो? तो एटलीस्ट आप मेंस तक तो पहुंचो, उसके बाद हम बात करते हैं ना फिर क्या होगा क्या नहीं होगा, बट वहां तक पहुंचना, मेंस क्लियर करके फिर इंटरव्यू तक जाना, दैट इज आल्सो अ बिग थिंग। फिर सिलेक्शन और नो सिलेक्शन दैट्स अ सेपरेट इशू, बट वहां तक अगर आप पहुंचते हो तो इट शोज योर क्रेडिबिलिटी दैट यस यू आर केपेबल इनफ टू डू वेल इन द एग्जामिनेशन। समझ रहे हो आप? गुड, फाइन, लेट्स कम टू सेक्शन 4. 4 till 11 is left. We'll complete that. अच्छा, उससे पहले a few cases that I have, very interesting cases. Please. Please write. The case is Alisha Berry, Berry, Alisha Berry versus Neelam Berry. Alisha Berry versus Neelam Berry, 2025 Supreme Court. 2025 Supreme Court. Please write. The Supreme Court observed the Supreme Court observed that there is no justification whatsoever. There is no justification whatsoever for the trial court to have issued bailable warrants in an application filed under the DV Act, full stop. The proceedings under the DV Act 2005, are quasi-criminal proceedings, which do not have any penal consequence, except, बताइए कहां पर है penal consequence? Except where there is a violation, very good, except where there is a violation or breach of a protection order, except where there is a violation or breach of a protection order, full stop. ठीक है, तो पहली बात तो देयर क्वासी क्रिमिनल नेचर, there is no other criminal consequence, penal consequence except the breach of a protection order. That means if you breach a protection order, only then and only then will you be prosecuted. Fine. Please write another case. Vishal Shaha versus Monalisha. Monalisha. Vishal Shaha SHAH versus Monalisha Gupta. ठीक है, this is 2025 Supreme Court, right? The court observed that in proceedings under the DV Act, there is no requirement for a party to be personally present. As the proceedings are quasi-criminal, in nature. As the proceedings are quasi-criminal in nature. Full stop. Also, comma, the court observed, that impounding of the appellant's passport, was ex facie illegal. Prima facie होता है, ex facie illegal. Ex facie illegal. Fine. The next case, very interesting. Shaurabh Kumar Tripathi, SHAURABH. Shaurabh Kumar Tripathi Saurabh Kumar Tripathi versus Vidhi Rawal. Excuse me. Versus Vidhi Rawal. Again, 2025 Supreme Court. 2025 Supreme Court. Please write. The Supreme Court held that the Supreme Court held that the Supreme Court held that the High Courts can quash complaints filed under Section 12 of DV Act 2005, can quash complaints filed under Section 12 of DV Act 2005 in exercise of their inherent powers, under Section 482 CRPC. Under Section 482 CRPC. Brackets open. Now Section 528 BNSS. Now Section 528 BNSS. Brackets closed, full stop. This power of the High Court can be exercised. This power of the High Court can be exercised to prevent abuse of the process of any court. To prevent abuse of the process of any court, or to secure the ends of justice, as per the latter part of Section 482 CRPC, or to secure the ends of justice as per the latter part of Section 482 CRPC. Full stop. However, interference under Section 482 is warranted. Interference under Section 482 is warranted only in case of gross illegality or injustice. Is warranted only in the case of gross illegality or injustice. Full stop. DV Act 2005 is a welfare legislation. DV Act 2005 is a welfare legislation, and the High Court should be very circumspect. While applying 482 CRPC to quash complaints under the DV Act. While applying Section 482 CRPC to quash complaints under the DV Act. Full stop. This will prevent the frustration. This will prevent the frustration of the very purpose of. This will prevent the frustration of the very purpose of enacting DV Act 2005. Of enacting DV Act 2005. ठीक है. Another case, AAS versus SAS. This is all capital. It's like this. AAS versus SAS. AAS versus SAS. It is 2025 Bombay High Court. It is 2025 Bombay High Court, right? The court observed that if there is adequate material on record, comma, a person can be compelled to give voice samples. A person can be compelled to give voice samples even in cases under the DV Act. Even in cases under the DV Act. Even in cases under the DV Act. In the present case, the woman was ordered to give her voice sample. The woman was ordered to give her voice sample so as to allow the husband to prove her extramarital affair. To prove her extramarital affair. To allow her husband to prove her extramarital affair. Next case, Ashish Chandrakant Chauhan. Ashish Chandrakant Chauhan. Ashish Chandrakant Chauhan versus Mohini Mukesh Chauhan. Ashish Chandrakant Chauhan versus Mohini Mukesh Chauhan. 2025 Bombay High Court. Bombay High Court. Please write. It was held that preventing a woman from residing in her shared household, preventing a woman from residing in her shared household, preventing a woman from residing in her shared household amounts to domestic violence. Amounts to domestic violence within the meaning of Section 3 of DV Act 2005. Within the meaning of Section 3 of DV Act 2005. This further violates, full stop, this further violates the right enshrined in Section 17 of the Act. This further violates the right enshrined under Section 17 of the Act. Here basically the brother's wife was denied residence. So this is domestic violence. Fine. That is the extent of cases that are very relevant and they talk about different dimensions. Otherwise there is nothing new. It is repetition of the same old observations. Are you revising the JJ Act? आप लोग रिवाइज कर रहे हो JJ Act को? It's very important for you to revise JJ Act because if you do not revise JJ Act, it will be very difficult for you to later on memorize it. ठीक है? अभी किसी APO एग्जामिनेशन में JJ Act आ रहा है? मेंस में, where? UP. What about Bihar? बिहार में आ रहा है? No? बिहार में है वैसे. I'll only teach it in the APO batch. Fine. So now we come to chapter 3, which says powers and duties of protection officers, service providers, etc. Please focus here. Section 4. Information to protection officer and exclusion of liability of informant. They are saying any person who has reason to believe that an act of domestic violence has been or is being or is likely to be committed may give information about it to the concerned protection officer. No liability, civil or criminal, shall be incurred by any person for giving in good faith of information for the purpose of subsection 1. So any person can give first of all information to the protection officer, and if that information, let us say later on, comes out to be false, but you had given the information in good faith, then you will not incur any liability. There is also another provision which talks about protection of action taken in good faith. That is section 35. Section 35 talks about protection of action taken in good faith. Duties of police officers, service providers and magistrate. अब ये जितनी भी duties हैं, what they do is, ड्यूटीज यहां पर भी है, ड्यूटी 6 में भी है, 7 में भी है, ड्यूटीज आपको 9 में भी मिलेंगी, ड्यूटीज ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर. तो मैं आपको बताऊं ये क्या करते हैं, इन ड्यूटीज को मिक्सअप कर देते हैं इन द ऑप्शंस, एंड देन दे आस्क यू which of the following is a duty of a shelter home, which of the following is a duty of a police officer, or which of the following is a duty of a protection officer. इसको समझना बहुत आसान है, just try to consolidate the provision. See what does it say. अब एक है पुलिस ऑफिसर, वन इज अ पुलिस ऑफिसर, वन इज अ मैजिस्ट्रेट, वन इज अ सर्विस प्रोवाइडर. हाउ विल यू ड्रॉ अ पैरेलल बिटवीन द थ्री? तीनों की ड्यूटीज एक ही जगह पे दी हुई है, मतलब तीनों की ड्यूटीज कॉमन है. तो एक पुलिस ऑफिसर या एक सर्विस प्रोवाइडर या मैजिस्ट्रेट, तीनों ऐसी क्या चीज है जो इन कॉमन करेंगे? लेट्स सी. अ पुलिस ऑफिसर, प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर, सर्विस प्रोवाइडर or magistrate who has received a complaint of domestic violence. Now the main focus should be that there is somebody who has received a complaint of domestic violence. So you have received a complaint of domestic violence. तो जब आपको भाई पता चलता है कि किसी महिला के साथ domestic violence हो रहा है, तो what is exactly that you are supposed to do? That is your duty. Or is otherwise present at the place of an incident of domestic violence. मतलब वो domestic violence की जगह पर ही है. Or when the incident of domestic violence is reported to him, when the domestic violence incident is told to him, then what will you do? Shall inform the aggrieved person. So you will inform the aggrieved person. What? A. Of a right to make an application for obtaining a relief by way of protection order, monetary, custody, residence, compensation, or more than one such order under this act. Where will the application be filed? Which provision? 12. Very good. B. Of the availability of services of सर्विस प्रोवाइडर्स, दैट सर्विस प्रोवाइडर्स की फैसिलिटीज आपको अवेलेबल है. अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ सर्विसेज ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर्स, प्री लीगल एड अंडर लीगल सर्विसेज अथॉरिटीज एक्ट, राइट टू फाइल कंप्लेंट अंडर 498A ऑफ IPC, which is I hope 85 of BNS. Is it right? Good. Proviso. Nothing in this act shall be construed in any manner as to relieve a police officer from his duty to proceed in accordance with law upon receipt of information as to the commission of a cognizable offence. अब ऐसा नहीं है कि DV एक्ट के अंदर आ गए हो तो आपकी ड्यूटीज खत्म हो जाएंगी. If you see that the offence which is committed in respect of domestic violence, the offence which is committed is a cognizable offence, you also proceed parallelly, you register FIR and go for investigation, etc. Fine. For example, let us say economic abuse अगर देखा जाए तो let us say if you steal the स्त्रीधन of the woman, I said if you steal the stridhan of the woman, okay, it is domestic violence, but is it not theft? Or will it not be, or it might be criminal breach of trust, etc. So if there is an offense also, you are not relieved of your duties if you are under the DV Act. Fine. तो देखोगे अगर आप A to E, if you see all the duties here, if you see all the duties here of police officer, magistrate, service provider, protection officer, all these duties are basically related to giving information to the aggrieved person. You make complaint, you have service providers, you have protection officer, you can get legal aid, you can file a complaint. So they are all informing the rights to the aggrieved person. So informing the rights to the aggrieved person is the duty of all these three individuals. And these 3-4 individuals is everybody in the DV Act. बचा कौन? सर्विस प्रोवाइडर आ गया, प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर आ गया, मैजिस्ट्रेट आ गया, पुलिस ऑफिसर आ गया. So who is left? Nobody is left. Police officer, protection officer, service provider, magistrate. So everybody has to inform the rights to the aggrieved person. Duties of shelter home. Now, as the name suggests, it is a safe place. जैसे हम JJ Act में पढ़ते थे ना, place of safety. पर वो child in conflict with law के लिए है. यहाँ पे they are talking about shelter home. Basically, it talks about a place which is safe where the woman can safely reside. It says, if aggrieved person or on her behalf, protection officer or a service provider requests the person in charge of shelter home to provide shelter to her, such person in charge of the shelter home shall provide shelter to the aggrieved person in the shelter home. या तो aggrieved person कह रहा है या उनके behalf पे protection officer या सर्विस प्रोवाइडर कह रहे हैं कि भाई इनको शेल्टर दो, तो शेल्टर आपको देना है. ड्यूटीज ऑफ मेडिकल फैसिलिटीज. If an aggrieved person or on her behalf protection officer or service provider requests the person in charge of medical facility to provide any medical aid to her, such person in charge of medical facility shall provide aid to the aggrieved person in the medical facility. Definitely you will provide aid to her in the medical facility. Appointment of protection officer. Who is going to appoint protection officer? I told you, state government, and state government provides sanction for their prosecution also. Which provision? Are you sure? Is 34 related to sanction? Huh? Yes, exactly 34. Appoint such number of protection officers in each district as it may consider necessary. In each district as it may consider necessary, and shall also notify the area or areas within which a protection officer shall exercise the powers and perform the duties conferred on him by or under this act. So, of course, for the entire nation, you can't appoint protection officers. So, every state for every district is going to appoint different protection officers, and those protection officers are going to do the functions under the DV Act. Protection officer shall as far as possible be woman and shall possess such qualifications as may be prescribed. So, as far as possible be a woman. That means it is not mandatory that she is a woman. ठीक है? But कोशिश ये करनी that the protection officer is a woman. Again, a more empathetic view will be coming from. A more empathetic view will be coming from the woman. The terms and conditions of service of the protection officer and the other officers subordinate to him shall be such as may be prescribed. Not relevant for you. मैं देख रहा था मैंने ऐसा क्या बोला जी. Duties and functions of protection officers. Now, what are the duties and what are the functions of the protection officers? How did this happen? But conspirator? मक्खी से उससे ज्यादा तो ये इंटरेस्टिंग था. कॉन्स्पिरेटर. Duties and functions of protection officers. It shall be the duty of the protection officer. Now, there are certain mandatory duties of the protection officers. What are the mandatory duties? Look here. To assist the magistrate in the discharge of his functions under this act. So, you will have to assist the magistrate in discharging the functions under the DV Act. To make domestic incident report to the magistrate. भाई एक्चुअली में डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस किस तरीके से कमिट हुआ था, क्या हुआ था, उन लोगों के बीच में क्या रिलेशंस एक्सेट्रा. in such form and such manner as may be prescribed upon receipt of a complaint of domestic violence and forward copies thereof to the police officer in charge of the police station within the local limits of whose jurisdiction domestic violence is alleged to have been committed and to the service providers in that area. Basically सबको बता दो कि domestic violence हुआ है तो ये महिला आपके पास help के लिए आ सकती है. Make application in such form, such manner to magistrate if the aggrieved person so desires, claiming relief for issuance of a protection order. Section 12 की application आप लगा सकते हैं. Section 12 की application aggrieved person भी लगा सकता है, protection officer भी लगा सकता है, service provider भी लगा सकता है. To ensure that the aggrieved person is provided legal aid under Legal Services Authority Act and make available free of cost the prescribed form in which a complaint is to be made. To maintain a list of all service providers providing legal aid, counseling, shelter, home and medical facilities in local area within the jurisdiction of the magistrate. To make available a safe shelter home if the aggrieved person so requires and forward a copy of his report of having lodged the aggrieved person in a shelter home to the police station and the magistrate having jurisdiction in the area where the shelter home is situated. To get the aggrieved person medically examined if she has sustained bodily injuries and forward a copy of the medical report to the police station and magistrate having jurisdiction. To ensure that order for monetary relief under 20 is complied with and executed in accordance with CRPC. To perform such other duties as may be prescribed. Now look at the duties of a protection officer in section 9. What are the duties of a protection officer? एक तो कोई ड्यूटी हमें बताइए प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर की, जो हमें बताइए कहां पर, सेक्शन 5 में बताइए ना, 5 में है तो सही. प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर सर्विस प्रोवाइडर, पढ़ो सेक्शन पढ़ो. हाँ तभी तो मैं यही तो समझाने जा रहा हूं, सेक्शन 5 में जो ड्यूटीज बताई है प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर की और सेक्शन 9 में भी ड्यूटीज बताई है. नाउ इन सेक्शन 5 द ड्यूटीज आर अबाउट इन्फॉर्मिंग द राइट्स टू द अग्रीव्ड पर्सन. बट व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट सेक्शन 9 आर द प्रोसीजरल ड्यूटीज ऑफ द प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर. ये सारे प्रोसीजरल एस्पेक्ट्स हैं. टू मेक डोमेस्टिक इंसिडेंट रिपोर्ट, टू असिस्ट मैजिस्ट्रेट, मेक एप्लीकेशन, ensure legal aid is given, maintain list of service providers providing legal aid, counseling, shelter home, medical facilities, to make available safe shelter home, to get aggrieved person medically examined, to ensure monetary relief is complied with, other duties. They are all procedural duties which have been given in section 9. They are all procedural duties given in section 9. जैसे अभी sir confused हुए, never get confused. That is why I always suggest no. So what will prevail? Always the main body will prevail. It will never be the marginal note that will be. ठीक है. Subsection 2. Protection officer shall be under control and supervision, very important, of the magistrate and shall perform the duties imposed by him on the magistrate and the government by or under this act. So who is going to appoint the protection officer? State government. For each state or each district. But under whose control will the protection officer function? Magistrate. Under the magistrate's control, the protection officer is going to function. So don't get confused कि state government appoint करती होगी तो state government के अंडर ही काम करता है. No, the protection officer acts under the control and supervision of the magistrate. ठीक है. I hope this is also clear. Good. Section 10, service providers. Subject to the rules as may be made in this behalf, any voluntary association registered under Societies Act or company registered under Companies Act or any other law for the time being in force with the objective of protecting the rights and interests of women by any lawful means, including providing legal aid, medical, financial, other assistance, shall register itself with the state government as a service provider. So you register yourself as a service provider. For example, you are an NGO for increasing legal awareness about domestic violence. You are an NGO which files complaints of domestic violence. You provide legal aid, you provide shelter, you provide medical facilities, you provide counseling, you provide therapy, etc., etc. that is a service provider. Service provider registered shall have power to. Now what are the powers of a service provider? अब आप लॉजिकली सोच के देखो बिना पढ़े, सर्विस प्रोवाइडर की पावर्स क्या होंगी? भाई मैजिस्ट्रेट को इन्फॉर्म करना, कंप्लेंट फाइल करवाना, उस महिला की मदद करना, देखो ये सब चीजें मिलेंगी. रिकॉर्ड डोमेस्टिक इंसिडेंट रिपोर्ट इन द प्रिस्क्राइब्ड फॉर्म if the aggrieved person so desires and forward copy to magistrate and protection officer having jurisdiction. Get aggrieved person medically examined and forward copy of medical report to protection officer and the police station. Ensure that the aggrieved person is provided shelter in a shelter home if she so requires. Right? No suit, prosecution, legal proceeding shall lie against any service provider. अब पता चले जो मान लीजिए जो रिस्पोंडेंट है जिसके ऊपर एलिगेशन है डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस का, वो कहे ये लोग मेरे घर के बाहर नारेबाजी करते हैं, इन लोगों ने मेरे खिलाफ फॉल्स कंप्लेंट फाइल करी है, दे आर हैरेसिंग, मेरे को इंटिमिडेट कर रहे हैं, मुझे डिफेम कर रहे हैं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होगा. नो सूट, प्रोसिक्यूशन और अदर लीगल प्रोसीडिंग शैल लाई अगेंस्ट एनी सर्विस प्रोवाइडर और एनी मेंबर ऑफ सर्विस प्रोवाइडर हु इज or who is deemed to be acting or purporting to act under this act for anything which is in good faith. अब वो good faith में होना चाहिए, लेके good faith का मतलब क्या होता है? Due care and attention. कैसे याद कराया था मैंने? दिल्ली क्रिकेट एसोसिएशन ऐसी कराया था, ड्यू केयर एंड अटेंशन. क्योंकि जनरली लोग किसमें कंफ्यूज होते हैं? ड्यू केयर एंड कॉशन. गुड फेथ is generally confused with due care and caution. अगर आपके सामने दो ऑप्शन आ जाए और आपने कभी नहीं पढ़ा हो या आपको याद नहीं आ रहा होगा, तो I am 99% sure you are going to select due care and caution because that is good faith. But the actual definition in IPC and BNS is due care and attention. That is good faith. ठीक है? No suit, prosecution, legal proceeding shall lie against service provider or any member of the service provider who is or who is deemed to be acting or purporting to act under this act for anything which is in good faith done or intended to be done in the exercise of powers or discharge of functions under this act towards the prevention of the commission of domestic violence. Again, you will not be facing any kind of liability. Section 11. Section 11. Duties of the government. अब government की क्या duties है? मुझे बताओ. गवर्नमेंट से एक्सपेक्ट क्या करोगे? भाई शेल्टर होम बना लो, हो सकता है ये एक्सपेक्ट करो. आई एम आस्किंग यू लूजली, मैं नहीं कह रहा वहां लिखा है, मैं कह रहा हूं शेल्टर होम बना लो, ऐसा कहो. प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर अपॉइंट करना. सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट एंड एवरी स्टेट गवर्नमेंट शैल टेक ऑल मेजर्स टू इंश्योर दैट प्रोविजंस ऑफ दिस एक्ट आर गिवन वाइड पब्लिसिटी थ्रू पब्लिक मीडिया इंक्लूडिंग द टेलीविजन, रेडियो एंड प्रिंट मीडिया एट रेगुलर इंटरवल्स. इस एक्ट के बारे में वाइड पब्लिसिटी होनी चाहिए. रिपीटेडली आस्क्ड है ये, बार बार इस तरीके की चीज पूछी जाती है. देन सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ऑफिसर्स इंक्लूडिंग पुलिस ऑफिसर्स एंड मेंबर्स ऑफ जुडिशियल सर्विसेज आर गिवन पीरियोडिक सेंसिटाइजेशन एंड अवेयरनेस ट्रेनिंग ऑन द इश्यूज. नेक्स्ट, effective coordination between services provided by concerned ministries and departments excuse me, dealing with law, home affairs including law and order, health and human resources to address issues of domestic violence is established, and periodical review protocols for various ministries concerned with delivery of services to women under this act including the courts are prepared and put in place. अब ये थोड़ा सा ना पॉलिसी लेवल पे ड्यूटीज बताई गई हैं गवर्नमेंट की कि क्या करना है. वाइड पब्लिसिटी देनी है, सेंसिटाइजेशन करवाओ, coordination between ministries, etc. This is in section 11. So section 4 talks about information. What information? Information can be given to the protection officer, but application can be made before the magistrate under section 12. Very good, very good. And the protection officer will not face any civil or criminal liability. Then section 5 talks about the duties of police officers, protection officers, service providers and magistrates. हर किसी की ड्यूटी कि भाई अग्रीव्ड पर्सन को सब लोग उनके राइट्स बताएंगे. Then shelter homes की ड्यूटीज, then medical facilities की ड्यूटीज, then appointment of protection officer. Protection officer को अपॉइंट कौन करेगा? अब अपॉइंट कर दिया तो उनकी ड्यूटीज बता दो, ड्यूटीज और फंक्शंस क्या होंगे प्रोटेक्शन ऑफिसर के. Then 10 में क्या है? 10 is service providers and 11 is duties of the government. ठीक है? I am giving you 30 seconds. Quickly go through the act. Then we'll try to again memorize it and look at the different chapters as well. I am not a law student but interested in legal comprehensive understanding of law. Any foundation course free of cost for judiciary? See, it's not about a foundation course being brought free of cost, but even if you follow the different segments that are being uploaded on our channel, I think you will be better placed in terms of a comprehensive understanding of law. And there are a variety of issues that have been discussed of day-to-day life also and of technical nature also. Both kinds of issues have been discussed in the public forum and they are available free of cost. So I think you should refer to those and your understanding about law will be much better. Yes. है तो सही. अभी तो पढ़ा 35 पढ़ा ना अभी. प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ, आप नहीं थे तो मैं घर आके पढ़ा दूंगा अगली बारी. प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ एक्शन टेकन इन गुड फेथ, अभी तो 35 पढ़ा हमने. थर्टी फाइव है उसमें. फाइन, लेट्स जॉग आवर मेमोरी, लेट्स पुट सम प्रेशर एंड सी कि हमें याद रहता है कि नहीं रहता है. ठीक है, मैं ये सिर्फ इसलिए करा रहा हूं कि एक बेसिक मेमोरी क्रिएट हो जाती है. फिर जब आप बाद में जैसे घर जाके याद करोगे तो इजी हो जाएगा. इट्स नॉट दैट कि मैं ऐसे ही पढ़ाऊंगा कि मैं आपको सिर्फ याद कराता रहूंगा क्लास में, ऐसा नहीं है. आप घर जाके ही याद करोगे, दैट इज ट्रू. बट द थिंग इज, when you do this, especially for these small legislations, I can get it done because they do not require much in-depth understanding or more than what we have already done. Okay? So let's go through them. So when we talk about section 2, let us go section wise only. Section 2 clause A talks about aggrieved person. Then section 2 clause, let us say S, talks about shared household. Then section 2 clause K talks about, section 2 clause F talks about domestic relationship. Then section 2 clause Q talks about respondent. Section 3 talks about the definition of domestic violence. Section 4, अब ये हो गया, let us say, so I think this is chapter 1. This is the only provision in chapter 2, right? Then we have chapter 3, which is 4 till 11. Section 4 talks about the information which is being given. Section 5 talks about duties. Now these are the general duties of protection officer, of magistrate, of police officer, of service providers. Section 6 talks about duties of shelter homes. Sorry, बिल्कुल सही है. Talks about duties of shelter homes. 7 talks about duties of medical facilities. Section 8 talks about appointment of protection officers. Section 9 talks about its duties. Section 10 talks about service providers. Section 11 talks about duties of central government plus state government. ठीक है? This is chapter 3. Then comes chapter 4. And I think chapter 4 is from section 12 till 29. Huh? 12 is the application. 13 is the notice. 14 is counseling. 15 is assistance of welfare experts. 16 is proceedings to be held in camera. 17 is right to reside in shared household. 18 is protection order. 19 is residence order. 20 is monetary relief. 21 is custody order. And 22 is compensation. Furthermore, 23 is interim orders या interim reliefs plus ex parte orders. 24 is copies to be given free of cost. 25, 26, 27, 28 and 29. 29 I remember is appeal. 28 is application of CRPC. 27 is jurisdiction. So 25 and 26, I think this is duration plus alteration of orders, right? And this is other legal provisions, relief in other legal provisions, right? This was which chapter? This was chapter number 4. Then comes chapter number 5. I think chapter number 5 is the miscellaneous chapter. It is from section 30 till I think 36. 37? 37. 36 is derogation, 37 is rules. I think, right? Let us see. 30 is what? अब यहाँ पे they will be public servant. Then there is breach of protection order, right? Then 32 is cognizance, that it will be cognizable plus non-bailable offense. Then 33 is breach by protection officer. Then 34 is sanction. 35 is action taken in good faith. 36 is act is not in derogation. And 37 is central government can make rules in this behalf. I think now you know how many chapters there are. 5. Which chapter deals with what and what provisions are there. This is the smallest benefit of just trying to memorize it in the class. I hope you are able to digest it. Sure? No confusion till now? No doubts? Are you able to memorize it? Sure? Do you want to practice it again? Again. Okay, take 2 minutes. Take 2 more minutes. I have all the time, no worries. कौन सी है ये this I say, how many of you are wanting to attend the Muslim law classes from the 9th of March? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What about the rest of you? आपने कर लिया है? What about you? You are there in the foundation course batch? Okay. What about you? आपका हो गया है? What about you? Yes, ma'am. What about you? Not in the 11:30 batch? And what about BNSS starting from 9th March? अब आगे आप सबका तो हो गया है ना BNSS? ठीक है. BNSS from the 9th of March, I'll start from 9th March at 8:30 and 11:30 I will be doing Muslim law. जब आप ऐसे कर लेते हो ना एक दो बारी, यू स्टार्ट टू गेट द फीलिंग दैट यू नो द एक्ट. आपको ऐसा लगता है कि हाँ मैं इसको जानता हूं. आई होप आप मेरी बात समझ रहे हो. ऐसा लगना शुरू हो जाता है दैट यू नो द लेजिस्लेशन इन एंड आउट. आपको पता है, बिकॉज नाउ यू हैव सीन एवरीथिंग, every provision, every chapter. So you now get very familiar with the act. आपको लगता है कि you know it, and when you know it, nothing seems alien to you. So there is that feeling that हाँ this is under control. What happened? Conspirator. Okay, conspirator. There is this feeling that you have the act under control. ऐसा नहीं है that it is going out, because you have seen each and every provision, cover to cover reading. Everything you have seen in the legislation, nothing is left. समझ रहे हो आप? And that is a very good feeling, let me tell you. जब लगता है ना, और ये तो छोटे एक्ट्स हैं, जब ऐसा लगता है BNSS में, CPC में कि यार we know it, हमें पता है कौन सी चीज कहाँ है. Definitely we know where to find which provision. It is a very good feeling because you get some sense of confidence that yes, you can do it. Otherwise everything seems like a very big mountain to you. समझ रहे हो? I read a story which is a very famous story also. It's a Zen story. I read it, that there was a person, it's about fear. There was a person who on a very stormy night, he was crossing the mountains and suddenly his क्या कहते हैं, his leg slipped and he just caught hold of a branch. And the entire night it was raining cats and dogs. He just caught hold of that branch और वो लकड़ी को पकड़ के जो पहाड़ से निकली हुई थी खाई में कूदने से बचने के लिए उसको पकड़ के बैठा रहा कि सुबह कोई आएगा मेरे को रेस्क्यू कर लेगा. रात भर डरता रहा वो व्यक्ति, और बड़ी मुश्किल से जब उसको थोड़ा सा उसने करेज जुटाई और जब थोड़ी सी सनलाइट आई और नीचे देखा तो नीचे एक और बहुत बड़ा पत्थर था जो 1 फुट नीचे भी नहीं था. मतलब वो उस ब्रांच को छोड़ के सिर्फ एक पैर नीचे रखता और वो आराम से अपने पैरों पे खड़ा हो जाता. That is fear. You just have to change the channel. That is exactly what is fear. We think that it is too much. Like CPC मैंने देखा बच्चों को इतना डर लगता है. I am taking the classes in Bihar APO. I remember there were students when I started the foundation course for CPC. I think 1.5-2 years back. बहुत पुरानी बात है. तब जब मैंने स्टार्ट करा था foundation course for CPC, at that time students after the class used to come to me literally probably in tears and saying that sir बहुत डर लग रहा है. मैंने कहा डरने की कोई बात ही नहीं है. And after CPC was over, they were all extremely happy कि सर इससे डरने की जरूरत तो कभी भी नहीं थी. The only thing is you don't know how to tackle it. तो डर तो लगेगा ही. You don't know how to tackle it, इसलिए डर लगेगा. Right? If you show a mobile phone to a person who has never seen technology, वो व्यक्ति डरेगा कि ये चीज है क्या? Because the person does not know how to tackle it. You getting my point? The trainer of a lion, the trainer of a tiger is not afraid of the lion because he knows how to tackle it. But we are, I hope, definitely afraid of the lion, right? So that's the only thing. You just need to know how to tackle it. इस चीज के साथ deal कैसे करना है? It's very easy to deal with, भाई. And trust me, CPC is much easier than CRPC or evidence or BNS. It's much easier than each and every other law. Trust me on that. And those of you who have done it already with me, they can testify to this, that yes, if you have studied well, अगर classes आधी छोड़ी हैं आधी करी हैं, I can't assure, but if you ask the students who have done CPC, they will tell you it is easier than BNSS to remember. चलिए आइए, लेट्स रिवाइज इट वंस. एवरीबडी श्योर? करके देखें एक बारी. लेट्स ट्राई दैट इफ यू आर एबल टू रिमेंबर द प्रोविजंस और नॉट. लेट्स नॉट राइट इट. ठीक है? सो इफ आई आस्क यू व्हाट इज सेक्शन 12? Application. How much time has been given to dispose of proceedings? 60 days. How much time for fixing the first date? 3 days. How much time for service of notice? 2 days. Which provision for service of notice? 13. Which provision for custody orders? 21. Which provision talks about duties of the central government? 11. Which provision talks about duties of medical facilities? 7. Which provision talks about duties and functions of the protection officer? 9. Which provision talks about definition of domestic violence? 3. Which provision talks about the definition of shared household? 2S. Which provision talks about the breach of protection order will be a cognizable offence? 32. Which provision talks about the penalty for the breach of duties by protection officer? 33. 33. Which provision talks about sanction has to be obtained by the state from the state government before prosecuting a protection officer for breach of his duties? 34. Which provision talks about appeal? 29. To which court? Court of session. Within how many days? 30 days. Which provision talks about that the proceedings may be held in camera? 16. Which provision talks about assistance of welfare experts? 15. Which provision talks about the duties of service providers? 10. 10. Which provision talks about monetary relief? 20. Which provision talks about protection order? 18. Which provision talks about the penalty for breach of protection order? 31. 31. Which provision talks about copies to be given free of cost? 24. Which provision talks about the jurisdiction of judicial magistrate of the first class? 27. Which provision talks about relief in other proceedings? 26. Which provision talks about duration and alteration of orders? 25. Which provision talks about the application of CRPC? 28. Which provision talks about that protection officers are public servants? 30. Which provision says that act is not in derogation with any other law? 36. Who can make rules under the DV Act? Central government. Under section 37. याद हो गया? आई थिंक हाँ याद हो गया. मेंटल पिक्चर बन गई, इधर की भी बन गई, पिक्टोग्राफिक मेमोरी बन जाती. दैट इज द पर्पस. एक पिक्टोग्राफिक मेमोरी बन जाती है जब आप ऐसे याद करते हो. ठीक है, आई होप याद हो रहा है. अब इसी को अगर 2-3 बारी आप रिवाइज कर लेंगे एक दो दिन में, तो आई थिंक ये 1-2 बारी के बाद आपके दिमाग में सेटल हो जाए. उसके बाद आपको बार बार इसको पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी, घबराहट भी नहीं होगी. और कभी कभार होता है कि माइनर लॉज से ना बच्चों को चिढ़ मच जाती है कि यार ये पढ़ना पड़ेगा, याद करना पड़ेगा, इतने सारे माइनर लॉज हैं. व्हेन यू डू इट लाइक दिस, इट सीम्स ईजियर. आई एम नॉट सेइंग इजी, बट इट सीम्स ईजियर एंड इट बिकम्स ईजियर इन फैक्ट. फाइन. आई होप इट इज क्लियर टू एवरीबडी. No confusions till now, no doubts, no problems. Fine. So we are done with the DV Act. In the next session, we'll be doing the Indecent Representation Act. Fine. That will take just one lecture and it will be over with the case laws, with linking with IPC and BNS. We'll do interlinking and intra-linkages within the subject as well, and it will be done. Fine. Thank you so much. We'll meet in the next session.